Welcome, everyone, and thank you for listening to the Hire Calling Podcast, your source for all things hiring, staffing, and recruiting. I'm Pete Newsome and joined by Ricky Baez. Ricky, how are you today?
I am doing great, Pete. How's your week going so far?
So far, so good. It's still
Yeah.
early, so anything
Yeah.
could happen, but it's a good day. It's College Color Day, and
Yes.
so if you're not watching, then you wouldn't know this, but we are dressed representing our schools. I'm got my FSU colors on, and Ricky has his Rollins flag in the background, so we're
That's
doing our
right.
part.
That is right. Go Tar Heels, Rollins College. For those of you who do not know, everybody knows FSU. Not everybody knows Rollins College. It's an old school here in Winter Park, Florida. I don't know if you knew this or not, Pete. A famous alumni, Mr. Rogers, went to
Fred
Rollins
Rogers,
College. Yeah, Mr. Who?
Fred Rogers,
Is that his is that his first name? I don't know. I've always known him as Mr.
well, well, if you thought Mister was his first, I mean that could happen, but no, Fred. Okay, now I'm going to question it, but I'm 99% sure it's Fred Rogers. Yeah, that's who it is.
Yeah, well, he's an alumni. It's a Rollins College. It's regarded. It's a Harvard at the South. They got a really good business school. But yeah, I love it there. It's a beautiful, beautiful campus. Man, but you can't beat FSU though. I've been up there a couple of times for a game, and it's getting too old for those games, man.
You can't, you can't be too old for those games. That's not a thing. It's not
Yeah.
a. What does that even mean? You're too old for the
I
games.
don't know. Last time I went, God, I want to say about 5 years ago. I went up to Tallahassee for a game. A buddy of mine got tickets, and I don't know. After tailgating from like 10 a.m. until right before the game started, I just wanted a nap.
Oh, you're too old to party before and after the games. You're not too old for the games. That's
No, no,
different.
no. The game I'm there, but the party, I just want a nap before the game starts and right after, and also it's trust me, folks. We will get to the podcast. That same friend who's a really big FSU fan. He and I served together in the military. He was working over in Utah, and he got tickets, and I flew out there to see FSU play BYU, Brigham Young.
Oh, no kidding. Very cool.
Oh God, it was such an amazing experience. Beautiful, beautiful stadium right by the mountains. Man, I had a blast. Really had a
I
blast.
well, the college football there's nothing like it. And my son was on the team last year at FSU.
Oh,
My daughter and son, my older two, go there now, and my wife and I met at FSU. My kids are actually fourth generation Seminoles.
oh,
My
nice.
grandmother, if you can believe it, went to Florida State College for Women. So yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard the joke about FSU being a girls' school.
No, I
It
never have.
quite literally was a girls' school, and my grandmother graduated from there in 1935, I believe. And so my kids are very rare fourth generation Seminoles, which is kind of
Wow.
cool. Yeah.
That is awesome. I would love to have some history like that. Hopefully, in about 50, 80 years, my grandkids would talk about how their grandfather was at Rollins talking about Mr. Rogers and questioning whether his name was Fred or
Knowing his
not.
name.
So we don't know.
Never questioning beyond Mister. I love that. It's great.
I took it for what it was worth. So.
Well, cool. So we had fun this morning. We had the whole company on Zoom. I'm not even sure it is College Colors Day. Or Haley, who does marketing for us, just said that it was, and no one thought to question her. So we all wore or our college colors today and put backgrounds together, and that was it.
We did it for the picture, right? Because we wanted to take the picture, and everybody's going to see it over on LinkedIn. It is going to be on LinkedIn later on in the week. So we did it for the picture. You're right. Nobody questioned it, but it was still fun. I like to see where everybody's from, and
Are you supposed
some
to say you
jokes.
did it for the gram? Isn't that
Is that?
the you do it for the gram,
I
or
mean,
is that already passed? Like, does that make me dated
you
an
know
old
what,
guy
Pete?
by saying that?
I'm willing to pay somebody up to $20 an hour so they can help me with this new terminology these kids have today. And I never thought I would ever utter that sentence right there.
Yeah,
I
the
never
kids
thought.
today.
Yeah,
That's but you are too old for football games, and I
I
think
guess I am, man. I'm not too old for the barbecue and tailgating. That is fun. That is
there you
fun,
go.
and that's why I
Well,
need a nap
that's
afterwards.
your answer. You party early, take a nap during the game, and then you'll be able to rebound after. I think that's your ticket.
That's right. We got this. We got this.
All
Awesome.
right. So today, though, in addition to the college colors, we're going to do some Q&A. We
Mm.
threatened to do it. We promised to do it. So now we actually have to do it, and we
You
have a few
Did you
questions.
just say threatened?
We did.
Got it.
I think
Okay.
so.
We threaten
Um,
people with Q&A.
But we had some questions come in that are timely. We picked some out that are timely,
Yep.
and we really would like more. So we'll say it at the end, but please email us at hirecalling@fourcornerresources.com. You could get there through our website as well, fourcornerresources.com. We would love to hear from you because this is going to be kind of fun because Ricky doesn't know what the questions are. So
Nope.
we're gonna put Ricky on the spot a little bit today.
I love it. It's okay. I've
So
had coffee.
let's get right to it.
All
And this one's just this is a layup. Is this a good time to look for a job?
right. Is this a good time to look for a job? Huh. You know what? Let me start off answering it like this, Pete. I'm sure everybody. Well, you and I are both in Orlando, Florida, so it's we know Florida. You're more free to go to different places than other states. So when I drive around, especially today, it's after a kickoff meeting earlier today, and then I came back home to record this. I'm making some stops along the way, and I'm noticing that there are way more wanted signs now than what they were it's last year. There's just more wanted signs, and that tells me, and also, if you're in the service industry, or if you're a patron of the service industry, you'll see that customer service times are taking a lot longer because they are short staffed. So that tells me that the job market is hot. The question is it hot with the particular jobs you want? So that's the question. So whoever asked that question, I would like to know what they're looking for, and they lead me to believe that they're currently working right now. Because if they're not working right now, I don't know what they're doing that they say now is the time to look for a job.
And the answer is definitively yes, always.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, so from my point of view, it's absolutely, you just have to take a look at what's out there, and if it fits in with your life today in this post-COVID environment.
So from a staffing perspective, we have a lot of visibility into what's happening in the market. Of course,
Yeah.
it goes without saying,
Mhm.
and I would answer it from the standpoint of, well, I'll say from a candidate, because they said looking for a job, not looking to hire, because I would answer that differently. But if you're looking for a job right now, the answer is definitively yes from any vertical that I'm familiar with, and that is everything that we staff for here at Four Corner, which is basically professional level jobs from IT, finance, marketing, legal, you name it. If it's in a corporate setting, we typically are involved, and we are seeing something highly unusual happening right now. We're seeing salaries and increase at a rapid pace, and this has been over the past couple of months. So if you've been on social media at all, or you watch the news, we've all heard talk from both sides of the political aisle. We'll say about the government paying people not to work, right? And everyone has lots of people have strong opinions on that, and I don't really have much of an opinion on that because I don't think the folks the positions that we see open um, are at a trade-off where someone would take government money not to work. I don't think that's what's driving this at all. We're talking senior level positions, positions that require degrees, 10 plus years in the workforce. These are not entry level jobs that we're talking about where someone would be willing to take any kind of an unemployment payoff by choice, right, to not work. And we see the openings as being a real challenge in the marketplace right now for employers. And so by saying that, I'm also saying it's a great time to look for a job if you're a candidate. No better time than at any other that I'm familiar with in the time of my professional career. And that's a pretty big statement considering that we've now dated ourselves on how long we've been out in the market. The last jobs report that came out by the federal government showed that there were over 10 million job openings right now.
Oof.
And if you look at how many are historically open, let's just say over the last decade. Now, this isn't the most scientific number, but it's within the ballpark. We average around 6 million job openings typically. So we have significantly more job openings in the market usually has to contend with. And so what we're seeing right now is companies having to be very aggressive with what they're offering in terms of salary and perks and benefits.
Yeah.
There is a big competition right now for talent out there. Now, that makes it challenging if you're an employer,
Mhm.
challenging if you're a third party recruiting organization like Four Corner Resources, but great if you're a candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world is your oyster right now.
Yep.
So I'll say definitively, despite anything you may have seen on the news, anything you may read on social media, I would love to have that debate or discussion. If anyone says that companies aren't hiring right now or that jobs are at a premium, I would tell you it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Employees are at a premium right now. And so it's a great time to look for a job, and get out there quickly and start if you're not already doing that. If you're not employed, um, if you are employed, I'll go just a little further to say, be a little careful. There are things being offered right now that I believe are temporary in nature. Companies are reacting to, it's a supply and demand problem right now. The demand to have employees, to have staff, outweighs the supply, right? So in market conditions like that, wages need to go up. You have to meet the
Yep.
supply somehow, or attract what is should be your supply normally. And we're seeing a lot of what I consider to be unnatural acts happening right now. So don't leave a job that you're otherwise happy with, that provides the kind of growth opportunities you would want, that it's a culture you like, an environment you like, a team that you like, a manager that you like, just to chase a couple bucks right now, because that job may not be there once things normalize. Now, I have no way to predict the future or don't have a crystal ball, but I see these changes of such a nature that companies are going to pull back, at some point, and they're filling a need. They have to. We're recommending to clients in many cases they have to raise the rates to have the job filled, or be content to not fill it. But I don't know how sustainable some of this is. And so just be a little cautious I would always recommend to employees who are otherwise happy, don't chase dollars, go to your employer, let them know about the situation if you need to, and say, companies are, as we talked about in our last podcast, people are pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
So I would always recommend having that conversation, expressing concern if you see that you're getting lots of calls, higher rates, higher salary offers, but don't just chase the bucks. But yes, it's a great time to look for a job.
That is an amazing point, Pete, because you're right. Sometimes it's when people is, I don't want to say stuck, when people are in a position, they've been in that position for quite some time, and they think that there's something better out there, and they get, just motivated by what they're offering. Absolutely, do your research and make sure that that is something that's sustainable, that it's not something that's going to expire in 90 days or something like that. But more importantly, whatever you're hearing out there, there's nothing wrong with having a conversation with your current leadership. Now, I say that it's with a little asterisk, right? Because if the current leadership is the reason you're looking, right? I don't know if that's why you do want to have that conversation, right? But
Of course.
right. But outside of that, it's I find it better when an employee comes to me and they're like, look, here's what's happening out there, A, B, and C. I want to reevaluate my skill set here. And I love to have those conversations with my employees because, number one, you should have that relationship, number one. Number two, it gives you, the HR leader, the business leader, a really inside scoop above and beyond on what you're listening to these companies and these news medias put out there. This is your employee, your agent telling you, this is what I'm getting out there. And it will behoove of you to listen to that conversation and see what you can do. But man, that market is insanely hot right now. It really is. It's an amazing time.
I'll tell you, that I wasn't planning to talk about this today. No, I'm the one who knew what the questions are, and I didn't know what direction we'd take it in necessarily. But I think it's worth addressing. If you're an employee and you're thinking of leaving, and you're leaving for reasons that are of such a nature where it has nothing to do with your manager, it has nothing to do with your team, the work, the future, the environment, but it really is something like a big improvement in compensation, or perhaps the ability to work virtually instead of in the office. Now a lot of companies can't be flexible with either of those, but maybe they can be. And it's worthy of a conversation, benefits, perks, all these things that companies will use to attract employees, and they're real. But give your employer a chance.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's I think, and I say that not only from the staffing perspective, but also as a business owner.
Yep.
That we see, some folks who are great who leave, our organization at times, and I wish we'd had the opportunity to have a conversation first, right?
Yep.
If we knew that they, um, were considering doing it, maybe we can change something, maybe we can't,
Yeah.
depending on the situation. But I'd always want to try. I'd always want to
Yeah.
have that conversation, and there's no penalty for having that conversation. And it's yeah, I don't think it happens often enough, and I think that's what you were saying.
Correct. Yeah. It doesn't happen often enough, and it would be nice if 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 people just had that comfort level and bring it up. And I understand some people are really uncomfortable in having those kind, especially talking about money and asking for something because they're afraid of rejection. Let me tell you, the questions you don't ask 100% of the time it's gonna be a no.
Right.
Right? If you ask, you increase those chances. So just let's sit down, let's have that conversation, and you never know what might come out of it. Just give your current employer that opportunity. But but man, because yeah, there are other opportunities out there, and maybe there are some things that can happen when you currently are right now that your future employer, for that matter, may not be able to provide. You never know. You're
Well,
right.
we know definitively, we know that the grass often is not greener.
Yep.
I mean, that is just a given. Do you think that the conversations may not happen because of fear of rejection, as you just said, or fear of, being punished for it, right? Some sort of negativity that comes out of it. Um, I don't know why they don't happen more often. Like you said, from both a staffing professional's perspective as well as business owner's perspective, I'll tell you, I wish they did, because I think in a lot of cases, when I look back, some things are, some differences are irreconcilable,
Yeah.
right? That's why it's a phrase. But many are not. Many are just a matter of having a conversation, open communication, sharing thoughts and feelings. Now, you don't want to go to that well too often,
Mhm.
right? You have to be willing to leave if or willing to stay if the answer is not what you want as an employee. But I don't see a penalty for having the conversation in the appropriate way at the appropriate time. Do you think it depends on the organization with that? I mean, why do you think those conversations don't happen more often?
And I'm speaking from a place of experience here, because I used to be that guy. I used to be that guy who I hated having conversation about pay with my manager or anybody. Now that was back about 15 years ago. It took me about 4 years to kind of get over that. Right. I think from personal experience, Pete, I think it's got to be more about the awkwardness of that conversation, because not everybody is comfortable with it. So I'm here to tell people that yes, it's awkward. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but at some point, whatever you're comfortable with right now, it started with it being uncomfortable. So start having those conversations now. Practice having those conversations right now, because I know a lot of people out there, especially when it comes. It's I know this is not part of it, but this kind of relates. Um, when somebody gets offered a position, and we're talking about compensation, and you as a candidate who just got hired or offered, they give you a number that it was lower than what you thought, but you're just dreading having that conversation and going back and forth to see if you can get more. That is so uncomfortable. People leave money on the table. They
Sure.
do. So it really is about being comfortable and having that conversation. And Pete, it's up to us too to create the environment where people are comfortable to come over and talk to us. Or so I think it's a really good idea to first connect with your leader, have that conversation, but take a look at yourself. Take a look in the mirror, candidate. Take a look in the mirror to see what is it that you love about the organization. What is it that some areas of opportunities, and what are you willing to forego or keep. You're never going to find that 100% perfect job. For that 90% you like, there's going to be 10% you don't like, but you have to be okay with in any organization. So you really do have to take a self-assessment of your skill set, what you're willing to do, and what you're willing to, I hate to use this word, the T word, tolerate. I don't want to say that, right? But It's I think you know what, Pete, and I'll say this and I'll stop. Chris Rock said it best. Chris Rock said did a comedy routine about 15 years ago that I thought it
Hey,
was awesome.
this is a safe for work show. So
No,
before you,
yes, I got you.
yeah, okay, because
I got
I'm a
you.
Chris Rock fan, but
So no, me too. So I know this is PG, not even 13. He said, when you love somebody or you love something, you can't just love the best. You have to love what's worse as well, and you have to be okay with it. So when you put a toast into the toaster, that toast comes out nice and perfect. You got to love the crumbs at the bottom of that toast, the crumbs that collect at the very bottom overall. So as somebody who's looking for another job, take a step back and take a look at where you're currently at, what you appreciate, what meshes with your career trajectory, what doesn't. Then let's start having that conversation with the leader. You'd be surprised what comes out of it.
Chris Rock said that, Ricky.
No,
Is
no, no,
that
no, no, no. No, no, he didn't say that last part. I threw that in there.
which
No, he
part of any of that did you attribute to Chris Rock? Because I
the,
did not
the
see that stand up.
the toaster, the
Okay.
the toaster part, where he talks about loving the toast and the crumbs. Now he said it in a much rated R version. I'm trying to clean it up for the show, but that's how he said it. It was on his HBO special a long time ago.
All right,
Oh man, I
Chris
messed that
Rock.
one up.
We will choose Chris Rock as the point to move on from. But
Gotcha.
yes, it's a good time to look for a job. Always, if you're not, if you if you need one and don't have one, but just be cautious of what may be temporary in nature out there due to the market conditions. That's all. Um, so let's go on to the next one.
Okay.
All right, question 2. I've applied to a lot of jobs, but I don't hear back. I haven't heard back. What should I do?
From the recruiter?
Well, this
From
is
the
just a
recruiter?
question, man. This is a question from the internet. So
Got it.
let's say I've applied to a lot of jobs, but I don't hear back. I'm assuming that's from a candidate, right? Who's been applying to jobs, right? So we know that. What are they hearing? Well, I mean, I think most times someone applies to a job. Now I'm assuming they're not working with a third party like Four Corner
Mhm.
because they're going to be engaged already
Yep.
with the candidate or with the recruiter, or if they've applied to one of our jobs, maybe a company like ours, a third party or direct employer, you haven't heard back. I think that's what they're looking to do. What do I do to get my resume pulled out from the pile? Do you have any advice on that?
Mm. Mm-mm-mm. I'm still thinking about not hearing back because as somebody who used to apply and being frustrated from not hearing back, I feel that question, Pete. I definitely do feel it. It's so let me answer this from a candidate's perspective, right? Candidate, I'm talking to you now. If you're out there, right, whoever asked this question, it's a really good question, and here's why. Please put yourself in the position of the recruiter. Please put yourself in the position of the recruiting manager when they have a requisition to fill. I would love to sit here and tell you that a recruiting manager has 45 minutes to look at one resume and make the proper assessments on whether this is the perfect candidate to pass on for the hiring authority to then interview, pass that pre-screen. The reality is it doesn't really work that way. They have maybe 5 requisitions, maybe 100 resumes, applications, each requisition, and they have to make a real good assessment on looking at a resume on whether they can go on to the next step or not. It takes 6 to 9 seconds to make an
Right.
impression, right? 6 to 9 seconds. So, from a recruiter's perspective, it's I personally believe that it's I understand. Actually, I'll take the belief part back. I understand why maybe there isn't any type of communication if you don't move on to that next step, but there should be, right? Because we should really give that candidate that GPS on what they can expect. That said, I've explained that position from the recruiter's point of view. From the candidate's point of view, you've got to do everything in your power to get that resume in front of that recruiter. How do you do that? LinkedIn is amazing. It really is amazing. Yes, it's a paid service, but you can get some really cool features when it's free. And the suggestion that I make to all the candidates out there is as soon as you apply, you make sure that you take note of that requisition number or the job ID number. The company, obviously, the position you apply for. After you apply, do a little homework. Go on LinkedIn. how we talked about 2 episodes ago when we talked about researching the organization on LinkedIn and figuring out who you're going to interview with. Figure out who's recruiting for that position, and send them an email and say, hey, I saw this position online and I applied for it. Here's the job number. Please let me, and here's my resume for your review. I applied for it online already. Please let me know if we can have a 5-minute conversations to talk about this position. If you're not the right person to talk to, please point me to the right person who I can talk to.
So I love all of that with one exception.
Okay.
I would call them, try calling them, and then send an email. Calling them, call
Okay.
first, right?
Got
Be
it.
a live voice to them.
Got it.
In fact, that my last job prior to Four Corner with the VIA was I did exactly that. I applied. I assumed it was going into a big stack. I didn't have any personal connections there.
Mhm.
I looked up the location of the job, asked who was hiring, and ended up getting my resume on top of the pile from that. And I don't know that I ever would have heard from them otherwise, because I just would have been yet another resume. And but I love the tip, and I think it's a really good one. Take the extra step is what we're talking about, I think. And from if you just look at how easy it's become to apply, it starts to answer the question as to why more applicants don't receive feedback.
Yeah.
Because the online sites, while extremely valuable to the recruiting process, have taken the personalization out of it and make it
Yeah.
very simple to apply. If it's easy to apply, then it's easy for everyone to apply. So if you can go on CareerBuilder or LinkedIn or Indeed or Monster or ZipRecruiter or Dice or any of these websites and rapidly click through and apply without actually being qualified. Now, this is a pretty big caveat too to this. Then don't expect a reply. You shouldn't, because if you don't meet the criteria as spelled out in the job description, then why should anyone have to reply to you? I would say you're disingenuous coming in. Now that's a little harsh,
Yeah.
right? I get that, but it shows that you're disregarding the information up front. So we've talked quite a bit on the last 2 podcasts about your resume and how it needs to represent what you've actually achieved, how you answer questions in an interview, consistent with what you've actually been able to do and achieve, being honest, being forthright.
Mhm.
Well, if you're applying to a job that requires a specific degree and 10 years of experience in an area, and you don't have that degree or any degree at all, perhaps, and no experience in that area, it's not realistic
Yep.
to expect the other party to apply. In fact, you're sending a pretty bad signal whether you know it or not. I mean, that's the truth, because there may be something else that you're a good fit for, but they're going to discount you pretty quickly as a whole, because at the very least, they know you don't follow instructions well, right? I mean, basic,
Yeah.
elementary level reading comprehension. And that, look, this is real talk, and it may not be favorable for candidates who are frustrated by applying, but the idea that you should just blindly submit your resume to a lot of places and expect results is just not a good idea. We end up at times seeing candidates reply to multiple ads of ours on the same day, job postings on our website, and sometimes they have nothing to do with each other. Well, it just is. It tells
Yeah.
it gives a pretty bad signal of the candidate coming in. So anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but be specific, because you can't follow your advice. If you've applied to 100 jobs in a day, you can't pick up the phone and call all of them, track down all the contact information on LinkedIn, which again is excellent advice. I mean, take that step, make that effort. So you won't do it. So then it just sort of dilutes the entire process, where you really want everything you do to be meaningful. And it saves you a lot of time that way, right? It's very time consuming to try to track down information on people. So you should only do it where you think you really have a good chance to get the job.
Or it's one more bonus tip for that one, especially with LinkedIn. This is more proactive, right? So instead of going out finding specific recruiters for positions you've applied, plant seeds today that are going to grow for you and be valuable for you in the future. Here's what I mean. If you're looking for a job, especially in the HR space, what I like to do, I tell all of my students, Pete, be active on LinkedIn. Even if you're happy with your job, be active on LinkedIn. Share relevant articles. More importantly, put out content, whether it's a white paper, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a vlog. If you put out relevant content, what's going to happen on a regular basis, what's going to happen is you're going to have LinkedIn that's going to take that algorithm, whatever content you're talking about or pushing, is going to put it in the face or in the front page of every other LinkedIn candidate or LinkedIn person, i.e. a recruiter, who is relevant to whatever you're talking about. And if it's there constantly, because Pete, you know, right now there's some people on LinkedIn that are always posting stuff that you know their name just by their posting. And if we saw their name come across our applicant tracking system later on, you're like, oh my God, I know that person. Boom, you've already made that connection. So if you're able, even if you're happy with your job right now, you never know what the future holds. Put out content right now, share content right now, be active on LinkedIn, because the more people see you as active, the more it's like branding. Right. So they see your name in front of their face, especially if they see your application come across their desk, it will pay dividends for you.
Why don't you, most people aren't going to do that. Right. Do you agree?
Most won't, but the ones that do.
Why do you think? Why do you think? I mean, now I'll say,
I think I know.
Not everyone should, right? And because it's when you say relevant content, that assumes that they have relevant content to share, right? They have a certain level of knowledge, experience, because it has to exist initially. But those that do, and I think anyone who's been in the workforce for a period of time probably does, right? If they chose to do it, but most won't do it. We know that. Why do you think?
Honestly, from my point of view, I think most people don't do it because they don't see the value in it and they don't think it's worth their time. Right? Why am I going to put this out there? Why am I going to talk about ADA? Why am I going to talk about FMLA? I mean, from my perspective, Pete, I could talk about that every day because I'm one of those weird people who love HR. And I love talking about those things and making it relevant. So to me, if I'm in the HR space, and that's something I love to talk about, especially with passion and energy, people are going to receive that. So if you're not passionate about it, you don't see the value in it, and you think it's going to take too long, that's how I think people don't do it. I mean, is that what you thought?
I think I think what you're describing is apathy, right? To some degree, yes. I think that lack of comprehension for what the result of it could be, or appreciation for what the result could be. I also think there's a big fear factor in putting information out there, because to some degree, to make it okay, it has to be relevant, but also has to be interesting, to some audience, and often that requires some level of, I'll say, controversy or opinion, right? If you take a stand on something, it could be challenged, and we live in a society right now where it's really hard to have a discussion on any topic publicly and often privately because of the sensitivity of
That's
everything,
a good point.
right?
That is a good point. Yeah.
Now you and I have had enough conversations off camera, and we know each other well enough to say that you and I are not in this group, right? We could have a healthy debate and topic and have different sides of a perspective and not get upset. But for anyone who's on Facebook, right, you see how quickly things escalate, how everything is politicized, and so I think that fear of is all tied together. I think it's all part of the same category of why people are hesitant to share anything, because they're going to be criticized potentially. And I will say that you got to get over it, right? That's a long way to say you have to get over it. Now you have to pick your battles, and you have to pick, where those battles take place, right? Your battlefield, I guess. So I'm not recommending to anyone, nor are you, I'm pretty sure, that you make, political, commentary
No.
on LinkedIn, but you also need to not shy away from potential, you know, disagreements. We put something up not too long ago on Bitcoin when we started giving it away, not giving it away, but giving it as an option to have payouts in on our
Yep.
referral bonus or referral fee. And it was interesting. I mean, just putting up a poll, right? And a poll, like an opinion poll of what
I saw
percentage
that.
of Bitcoin people would like to take. People had an issue with that, and like a couple cases, like angrily, it seems, right?
Yeah.
And which is bizarre to me. But yet this is the world we're in. But that's okay. Guess what? It got a lot of views. It got a lot of interaction relative to something mundane that didn't have. It wasn't polarizing. I don't know what that could be, but you know. So even though that fear is real, I think you stick your toe in the water, right? Start
Yep.
small, become comfortable with it, because it really is good advice. And I think it's unfortunate that most will ignore it
Yep.
and not do it, because you're limiting yourself
That's right.
in the process.
Yep. Look, all the tools are out there. You just have to be willing to put the time in and put that out there. But you are 100% spot on that, Pete. It's put things out there that it's going to help you later on, right? Nothing controversial, nothing like that. At the same time, I want to piggyback on something you just said. Don't shy away from differences of opinion, right? Show your skill set on how you're able to bring that conversation in and not attack the person, right? Because I know as a human being, sometimes we go there, right? But just try to better understand the point of view they have. If more people did that, Pete, I don't think we'll have wars in the world, right? Right? If people tried more to understand the opposite point of view, literally, genuinely trying to understand, I don't think we would have all the conflicts we have today. I'll leave it
It's
at
a
that.
it's a little trick I've tried on my kids a few times, is to say, argue the other person's perspective, right?
Yes.
On a debate. And putting yourself in the other person's shoes. um it- but it, yeah, I mean, it's not the only way you're going to overcome the fear, as you referenced earlier, is to take the step,
Mhm.
and have the thing that becomes fearful become comfortable. And there's no way to do that other than to address it head on.
That's right.
Okay, so back to the question though. Man, do we stray?
Boy, we do.
So you recommended reaching out via email. We kind of went over the top a little bit and said, let's we agree that you should make a phone call as well if you can. Communicate through LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn
That's right.
Messenger is a great way to do it. Invite that person, let them know, that create that familiarity of the that you mentioned, of the name recognition. um, we talked about handwritten notes on our last podcast on something to do post interview. Do it then too. Send your
Yeah,
resume in the mail with a note. Very infrequently happens. I mean,
that's true.
very rare. And it will stand out. Your resume won't be in a pile then, because it's probably going to be the only one mailed via hard copy. So you want to come out of the pile, do it that way. Um, Anything else on that? I have one more tip, but it's a bit of a commercial, but I'll make it quick.
No, actually, that was perfect. That I think we drove that point home, and people really do understand what they need to do to be seen out there in social media.
So my last tip, then, the commercial, if you will, this isn't about Four Corner in particular, but it is about using a third party recruiter. Is we have the ability to be aggressive on the candidate's behalf in a way that the candidate can't do directly, and we have the pipeline to the hiring manager. We can be persistent and aggressive where necessary with our calls, and we're asked to fill the job, so it's appropriate that we're very communicative in our approach with the hiring entity, whoever it is. So we're the candidate's advocate in that regard, in a way that the candidate can't be on their own, right? Just being courteous, and nor would I recommend to a candidate to be as aggressive as we are, right? In that, and it's not because it would come across as aggressive for them. For us, just what how we communicate, right? If a client asks us to fill a job, we take that responsibility very seriously, and we promote and present our candidates, you know, in a way that is going to be noticed, and not have them missed. And we're typically only presenting one candidate per opening, so um, that'll get you noticed. So
Yeah.
whether it's Four Corner or another third party, it will increase your chances of success. It
That's
just
right.
will. And or yeah, the last tip, and then we can close and move on to the next question is, if you have some sort of connection into that company, find that person too. So look at friends of
Ooh,
friends. LinkedIn is we've already talked about, will help in that regard, but let others help you when you're looking for a job, and you've applied somewhere. Use your network, and if you don't have one, start building it through
that's right.
LinkedIn sooner than later.
And
All
by the
right,
way, you should always be building a network, whether you need it right now or not. Always. Yes. Had to
great
throw that in there.
advice.
Sorry.
No, it's great advice, and
Yep.
we see it on LinkedIn when we see candidates who have 50 connections or 5,000 connections. We can't see it if they're once they're over 500, but the ones that don't have many connections, my thought is always, someone's limiting themselves,
Yep.
unnecessarily. All right, so I think we only have time for one question. We have a bunch more, so we're going to get to do this again soon. But I
That's
think
right.
we need to do at least three.
All right.
Um, this one is timely. My employer is requiring vaccinations, but it's not something I want to do. What are my options? Okay, HR guy.
Oof. So
What?
that question came up, huh? Ah, okay. Got it. All right. So here's what I'm going to say, and I'm going to say this from the point of view of the state of Florida, right? Because I'm not going to venture to guess that I know because look, federally, from that perspective, an employer can ask for a vaccination, and they can ask for
Requ-
proof.
Ask or require?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Require.
Require. They can
Okay.
require it as a condition of employment. Now, I say Florida because I don't know if other states has other areas that go more in deep, but at the very least, in the state of Florida, they can require it. Now, here's where you, as the employee, need to know what your rights are. Right. Let me start off by saying this, Pete. I'm not an attorney. And this is not, and what I'm about to say should not be taken as legal advice. If you have any questions deeper than what I'm about to say, go to your HR or go seek a real legal professional like an attorney, not me. Now, from an HR point of view, now that I got that out of the way, from an HR point of view, if you have a condition, a medical condition that prevents you from taking that vaccine, the organization is required by law to enter into what's called a dynamic dialogue to have a conversation with you about what kind of accommodations could be made. That is under the American Disabilities Act, also known as ADA. And what the organization has to do is figure out a way how to get to whatever objective they have in a way that it still suffices your medical condition. So I'll give you a great example, Pete. If I'm a candidate, it's if I'm HR, I'm working with somebody who has says I cannot get this done. Fine, let's have a conversation. And they ask to see what's a reasonable accommodation. If the concern is that we don't want to place this person in a situation where he or she might get infected by the virus or the other way around, then work from home. Allow them to work from home. So if the job calls for it, right? If you're a bus driver or a pilot, yeah, that's not going to happen, right? But if you're in a situation where you can work from home, that in itself is an acceptable, in general, an acceptable type of an accommodation. Religious too. So there are some options out there that you can ask for. Absent those things, I want to say that it's you either would have a job or you don't. And in the state of Florida, there has been some companies, a lot of companies actually, that are going that route. They're requiring vaccines. So you just have to know what your rights are as an employee to see what you can do if you have a legitimate medical concern or a religious concern, and then use those avenues. Other than that, you have to make a choice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that we're all learning right now.
Yeah.
Through COVID. about states' rights versus what the federal government can mandate,
Mhm.
and it seems to be a moving target at
Yeah.
times. And for us at Four Corner, as we continue to grow and do business in more states, we find out how unique the laws really are by state. And Florida being a right to work state, first, and having pretty straightforward tax laws and
Mhm.
requirements for employers is a relatively easy to state to operate from. But as you work in California and New York, which we do heavily in both, you realize how different it can really be.
Very.
Um, so the point you made is a great. Well, the first point of we're not giving legal advice is the first one, but the second one is make sure that you find out what's what the laws are in your particular
Yeah.
state and situation. Now, if you're based there, you probably already know and have a pretty good idea. But yeah, it's an interesting time in a number of areas right now. That being one where we're seeing a shift in the market for that. There's as we just talked about, this is a become a political issue in many cases, a very sensitive one, a very impassioned
Yeah.
thing for a lot of people, and quite frankly, we're not really used to that. Over the last what at least I'd say 3 or 4 decades in the U.S. of reacting to vaccinations the way that we are, and so there's a lot of learning that's going on. I think, and companies are trying to find their way, and we see it among our clients going
Yeah.
down different paths there.
Yeah.
We have clients who are requiring vaccinations for employees who are on site,
Mhm. And
and
some are not.
we're seeing some that
Yeah.
absolutely have no care to implement a policy about that at all. So I think as the employee, look at your state. If you need to talk to an attorney ever because you're unsure of what your options are. I mean, I think that's probably unnecessary in this case because every example that I know of, the employer has that right. The
Mhm.
is where we've encountered these situations, and so that option always exists for anything. And
Anything
these
pretty
days,
much.
often that does happen, but I don't think that's necessarily what we would recommend. I think it's understanding your employer's perspective, like you said, seeing if there's a workaround, if it's something that's really important to you, be prepared for it not to be.
Yeah.
And that may be a case to move on if it's something you're absolutely not going to consider doing. But look at all your options. That would be you're asking. The question was, what are my options? Well, ultimately, it's about doing what's right for you. Your
Correct.
employer is doing what's right for them. And that's the perspective they're coming from, whether you agree or not. And I say that without knowing who the employee is or who the employer is. I just think in a case like this, companies are doing what they think is best. Individuals are doing what they think is best. Sometimes they don't align.
True. And
That's just going to happen.
so I'll say this, Pete, in this one, it's, I think, out of all the things, all the virtues you can practice, all the human emotions you can practice, the thing that you should be practicing the most is patience. It really is patience, because this is something, exactly how you said, this is something that I don't think have been seen in ages and decades, right? So everyone from, I guess, the government on down, right? The government on down to a candidate are experiencing this in real time at the same time. So if it looks like some policies go left, some policies go right, and then they land in the middle, it's not that people are being undecisive, it's that they're trying to build this big ship and sailing in it at the same time.
That's
Right?
I haven't heard that, but that's a great phrase. I'm going to steal that from you and
Yeah.
maybe claim it as my own. But yes, that's
Yeah, so there's just a lot going on, and I know that if people are patient in giving organizations and officials and themselves some time to process this, and at some point I can't wait, Pete, to get to the point that we get to look back at this as a historical reference and like, wow, that was an interesting time. I was just talking to my class that just finished a few weeks ago, this same thing, because I told them in hindsight, I'm jealous because I would love to go through school now. With everything happening right now, I would love to go through school now, because in a classroom setting, you can go ahead and put whatever scenario you want and play it out and see what other people's points of view are without you landing in legal trouble. We don't get that luxury, right? We don't have that luxury. So we have to make sure we're right 100% of the time. We're in class, you can correct, demo, and correct. So I'm really jealous.
Maybe Rollins is different than a lot of colleges and universities, Ricky, because I don't know that freedom exists as you describe it.
Oh, in my class, I do. I put scenarios out there, and I put my students to work on these scenarios based on what they have and what they've learned so far, right? And if they put, because we don't do tests, we do presentations and case studies with real relevant issues that are happening right now. And one of the things I love what I do about teaching is the thing that I can't stand the most, Pete, is when we start learning or teaching from a book that's 40 years old. It's irrelevant, right?
If a book is 2 years old right now, it's outdated.
Exactly.
Right?
So what I do is I take all the different theories that we're supposed to learn from, and I show them how to put them in real life applications. And I tell them, do the presentation here, exactly how will you do it at work. But remember, don't be afraid to push the envelope a little bit, and then I can help you dissect it. I can help you run through it to see what works and what doesn't work. Because in a presentation setting, something that I just saw in the newspaper just 2 days earlier, if they're able to really put that theory into application, I'd rather do it in a place where they can make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. That way, when they apply it at work the very next day, they got it, and they're 100% spot on. So
all right, well,
that's how I do it at Rollins.
All right, kids, check out Rollins if you weren't already, because that sounds like the place to be.
I love it.
Well, good. Well, that's a perfect way to end on College Colors Day. A little Rollins talk.
There you go. Yeah.
And I'm excited because FSU is playing Notre Dame in football in 6 days, and oh boy, let's see what happens there. So it's a great way to kick off the season. So we only got to 3 questions. We'll have to come back and do this in the next 2 weeks, probably again, because we have a long list and it's growing. So we're on all the major platforms. We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. Please review us. Please give us a 5-star review if you do. Yes. But email us any comments or questions. We'd love to be able to address them. Get specific, challenge us. If it's too hard, I'll throw it to Ricky and let him take the blame for it from an HR standpoint.
Happens.
But we really do want to be your source for all things hiring, staffing, and recruiting, and target whether you're a hiring manager, an HR professional, a recruiter, or of course, a candidate. We want to provide content that's relevant and helpful to you. So hit us up anytime. And thank you for listening today.
Roger that, folks. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye from Pete. Goodbye from me. Drive safe. Good night.
Bye for now. Goodbye.